Should you really care about how much your football boots weigh? Well, brands certainly think that you should because they spend a lot of time emphasizing it in their marketing. So in this video, I just wanted to have some fun and compare one of the heaviest boots in my collection with one of the lightest. Now, for the heavier model, I've got the classic Copa Mundial from Adidas, which comes in at 331 grams. And for the lighter model, I've got the Puma Ultra 5, which comes in at just 212 grams. That means that the Copas here are going to be 56% heavier than the Ultras. And these two boots take a very different approach when it comes to their design, and that's one of the reasons they have a big difference when it comes to weight. But does that difference in weight actually affect things like comfort, touch on the ball, and most importantly, speed? After testing these head-to-head out on the field, I was pretty surprised with what I found, so hopefully you'll find something interesting in this video as well. And of course, after watching, if you're interested in picking up these or any of the other boots that I recommend, you can find links to them on sale with discount codes in the description below. So when it comes to the Copa Mundials, which are the heavier model, the first thing I noticed is that they definitely do feel a little bit more substantial. They're going to have a thicker sole plate with larger conical studs, and then they're also going to have just a generally thicker, more plush and padded leather upper. But despite the fact that the upper is a little bit more cushioned and padded, these are still an extremely comfortable pair of football boots, and despite their added weight, they do feel relatively minimal on feet. And I think that's probably because the majority of the added weight with the Copas is probably going to be coming from the sole plate itself, whereas the upper is this really soft premium leather, which although it is a little bit more padded, still feels really soft and malleable to the touch. I've had these boots for well over 3 years now. I don't use them as much anymore, and you can see that they've sustained a decent amount of damage. But that being said, I've put more hours on these boots than almost any other pair in my collection, so it is a testament to their durability that they're still standing up this strong. And while there is generally more material in the upper with the Copa Mundials compared to the Ultras, you are going to get a little bit more of a stretch throughout the toe box because of that natural leather, and that makes it good for players that have wider feet like me. And not sure if it's really adding anything to the weight of these boots, but you also get the longest laces known to mankind with these. In fact, they're so long that when I lace them up, I usually go underneath the sole plate. Moving on to the Ultra 5 from Puma, you can immediately tell when you get them in your hands that they feel a lot lighter than the Copas, and I think that's mostly down to the thinner and lighter sole plate that the Ultra 5 is using here. And just for reference, as I said before, the Ultra 5 is coming in at 212 grams, which pretty much puts them at a similar level to all of the other top-end speed boots in terms of weight. The Nike Vapor 16, the F50 from Adidas, as well as the Furon V8 from New Balance are all going to come in around that 200 gram mark. So when it comes to weight, the Ultra 5 is a pretty good representation of what you're going to get from a top-end speed boot. And not only is the sole plate razor thin on the Ultras, but you're also going to get a really thin and pliable synthetic upper with this Grip Control Pro. And another feature that I think slightly contributes to the weight savings on the Ultra is that you're going to have this one-piece upper design, so you're not going to have a traditional tongue here. You're just going to have this stretchy knit material that's integrated with the rest of the upper, and then the laces are going to be woven on either side of that knit material, so when you pull these on, it's almost like putting on a pair of socks. Now, when it comes to fit and comfort, the Ultra 5s actually surprised me. I found that although they were pretty slim throughout the entire length of the boot, my toes didn't feel too crushed towards the front. However, because you have that really thin synthetic on the Pumas, it's not going to give you nearly as much stretch as the natural leather that you find on the Copas. When it comes to comfort, these boots actually both fit really well despite the weight difference. I'd probably give a slight edge to the Copas just because of that natural leather, but it's really just going to come down to personal preference. Now, with that being said, let's get into the performance test. So to analyze the weight difference between these two boots, there's two main tests I wanted to perform. One of them was a straight sprint, and the other was an agility test. Starting off with the first test, I placed two cones roughly 20 yards apart. And then I did 4 sprints with the Copas and 4 sprints with the Ultras. And I made sure when testing to alternate between each pair of boots to make sure that fatigue wasn't going to be an issue. And after averaging the results of the 4 sprints with both boots, I found that the results were 238 with the Ultras and 236 with the Copa Mundials. So that means with these results, I actually averaged 20 milliseconds faster with the heavier boots. But if we're being honest here, I wasn't using the highest tech equipment to measure these times, so this small difference is really just going to be within the margin of error. So in a straight sprint over a short distance, I'm going to call it a tie. Next up, I set up an agility drill with 4 cones placed in a square. So this drill involves making 3 sharp 90-degree turns before returning to the starting cone. I ran this drill 4 times, twice with each pair of boots, and I was pretty surprised with the results. Because after averaging everything out, I ran a 658 with the Ultras and a 651 with the Copas. Now, maybe this is just placebo effect, but when I was running this drill with the 2 different pairs of boots, I actually felt a little bit faster with the Ultras compared to the Copas. So maybe that affected me a little bit mentally to the point where I could have been running a little bit faster in the Ultras than I was, and I felt like I had a point to prove in the Copas. But either way, I'm still surprised that these had a faster time. My main takeaway though from this performance testing is that when it comes to speed and agility, especially over short distances, the main difference between these boots isn't going to be just 100 grams or even 200 grams of weight. It's more specifically going to be the sole plate and the stud configuration. And seeing as that these boots both offer great traction on firm ground natural grass, I don't think that most players are going to notice a measurable difference when it comes to their speed. Next up, when it comes to touch on the ball, these boots are both going to offer you a different sensation, and I don't necessarily think one is going to be better than the other. The thin upper of the Ultra 5 is going to give you a more close, barefoot-like feel, and you're definitely going to notice that sting in your foot, especially when striking the ball or controlling the ball from a high velocity. So if you're looking for a pair of boots that's really minimal and has a clean striking surface, these are definitely going to deliver that. Now, when it comes to the Copas, the leather upper is going to be a bit more padded, so you're not going to get that same sting to your foot when you're controlling the ball or shooting. But even though the upper is a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier, you still get a lot of sensitivity with each touch, and I think that's pretty consistent with what you get on any football boot that has higher quality leather. Now, if you are interested in a pair of boots that's going to be the best of both worlds between these 2 options, you can check out the newer Copa Icon 2 from Adidas. Now, that boot is kind of a hybrid because it's going to have soft leather in the toe box, but then a razor thin synthetic in the midfoot. So with those, you're going to get the comfort of leather with the slick feel of a modern boot. And they're also only a few grams heavier than the Ultras, so you're not going to notice a big difference in terms of weight. With that being said, let's get into my final thoughts on heavier boots versus lighter boots. So when it comes to analyzing the differences between football boots, there are a lot of things to consider, but really, I don't think that weight is one of them. Because at the end of the day, the lightest football boots are going to be close to 200 grams, the heaviest football boots may get up close to 400 grams, and while that 200 gram difference seems big on paper, when you have the boots on feet, you're really not going to notice a pronounced difference. Instead, when you're trying on a new pair of boots, you should make sure that they're comfortable, that they provide enough lockdown throughout the ankle and heel area, and finally, make sure that they have the right sole plate and stud configuration for your playing surface. And then as an added bonus, you also want to make sure that the material type is going to give you your desired touch on the ball. So as long as you've got those things in check, you're going to be good to go. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to check out the video that's on screen now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.